It was only this week, Alex. I've been going through the programming of the station,
Yes.
and I recognize that you are into a couple of very, very interesting programs, man.
Well, yes. I mean, I have been on radio for quite some time. I'm really comfortable in this mid morning space during the week. It's very interesting and it's about to get even more so.
Yeah, I'm hearing so. I'm hearing such. Anyway, be blessed, man. Glad to have you with us this morning.
Appreciate it. Blessings.
Yeah. This morning, I would like to, we moving quickly this morning because our program is a bit long, so I'll try to do everything quickly. This time we have Sister Alison giving us this morning devotion.
Good morning. Good morning, Pastor. Good
Morning,
morning to
everyone.
Alex in the studio. Good morning to all our listeners. The Lord is with us. We have already asked Him, and we ask Him again in your presence. Be with us, Father, this morning. Thou, Lord, who alone art God. Thou alone, who alone art wise. And we depend on Thee, Lord, for all that we have. Let your Holy Spirit dwell and bring us to all goodness and truth, even as we seek and we study your word this morning for a few minutes. Thank you, Father, for Christ's sake. Amen. We speak this
Amen.
morning from the book of the prophet Ezekiel about the king, the king, the king, the king, the men who are gods on the earth. He says, O King of Cyrus, thou sealest of the sum, thou art full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast walked in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone is thy covering. Sardis, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes were prepared in thee in the day that thou wert created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. And I, God, have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways when thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise, they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore, I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuary by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy transgression. Therefore will I bring fire forth from the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth, in the sight of them that behold thee. And this is the word of God from the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 28. And he was speaking to the king of Tyre, so Tyre. Tyre is on two coastal cities like Port of Spain and San Fernando, two port cities where everything was good and rich and beautiful and all the treasures of the world passed through. And God was speaking and saying that I will destroy you. The very brightness of your beauty and your folly will destroy you, because I created all of that and you have lifted up your heart and you have become proud, and so pride has come, and so you will fall. And this is what God says to us today. Are you proud? You are proud of what I created and you give me no honor and glory, but you honor and glorify yourself. This God said to me. God said this to me. I point my finger at no one, but God must speak to you today, those of who God has put to listen. Are you great in this and excellent in that and lauded and gifted in this, that, or the other, that men bow to you and men give you plenty money and put you up on a pedestal and they bow before you and they speak about you and the newspapers are filled with you? I was one of those. I went that way myself. And so Satan, who used to be Lucifer, son of the morning light, his name was Lucifer, but he has become Satan. Are we becoming like Satan, so proud that we fall from grace in the sight of God because we love men to worship us? And do we worship men like that? Do we worship things? Do we worship our own greatness and our own goodness? The fact that we have money or we are wise and we have wisdom. Let us bow, hold on for a moment, and look at God and see what happened up in heaven when iniquity, because of our greatness, because of the goodness and the mercy and the beautiful creating power of a perfect God that has made us in his image. And we become so proud that we have forgotten him and we have become gods in our own rights. This is what God wants us to do, to examine ourselves and remember where we are, who we are, whose we are, who our creator is. And so worship him who created you and all things great and wise and wonderful. For he is the great and wise and wonderful and only God that exists, and not we ourselves, nor anyone that we worship or anything that we put above the beauty and perfection of God. This is our word from God today. Take a look at yourself and see the Creator who created you. This is our prayer, Father, that you help us through your Holy Spirit to see, and so that the truth will set us free. For Christ's sake, amen.
Amen. And this morning I will forego my word to the wise because I feel that this program, we are talking about sex and there are so much things to talk about sex. And I feel that this program will the time will not permit me to finish. So I will just go right into it. And those who are listening to me, I want you to listen carefully this morning, because this morning I want to talk about sex. I know, why is sex so rewarding? How does the brain respond to sex? And deal with all of that this morning. What can that explain why human being finds sex so pleasurable? I want to speak about our genitals, the high concentration of specialized nerve endings that, when properly stimulated, send signals to the spinal cord and region of the brain that process touch, pleasure, and activate our fight or flight sympathetic response. I am dealing with it from this angle because I know my audience are mostly Christians, and I know we in the church we find we go through this issue of sex as it is demonized. People indulge, they are considered to be sinners and weak, and the devil is leading them, and we continue to. Sometimes I'm listening to in the church people dealing with sex, and I cringe because I know it cannot be dealt with that way, and dealing with it that way we'll never be able to help it. And that's why we have more and more and more and more and more and more and more sexual activities in church, because we think we are dealing with it by saying to people, you must abstain. Premarital sex is wrong. You are going to hell, the devil, and it's wickedness. And those things cannot help the situation. And this morning I'm trying, by the help of God, to change minds. And I want to say that those who are listening to me after you finish hearing the program and you want us, Victorious Lifestyle, to come by your church afternoon and really deal with this thing to help your young people, we will make ourselves available. You see, when we deal with sex, we're dealing with orgasm, which is brain activity, which peaks in region like the posterior hypothalamus region, which causes increased breathing rate and blood pressure. These things are not things you could just pray yourself out of. These things are things you need to understand and act based on the understanding that you have. We talk about the ventral tegmental area, the substantia nigra and the nucleus accumbens, which are involved in reward, motivation, and addiction. Additionally, sex increases the activity of the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. This is a neutral circuit that is active during feeding, pain, relief, and drug addiction. So what I want to say to you, that there are things that you go through in your body that you know you can't just pray yourself out of. Sex is sex, and illicit sex is one of those things. And that's why I want to discuss it in a meaningful way this morning. Sex is by far the most complex and pleasurable emotion known to man. It is also a social activity that attracted the study of sociologists, and it appears that it is something that attracts all in different ways. So this morning, friends, I want you to listen as we talk about sex this morning. Good morning, everybody.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Pastor. A very interesting topic this morning. I'm looking forward to hearing what it is you have to say.
Oh, yes. I hope at the end they don't disfellowship us. Well, let's go.
Yeah, so, coming from a Christian understanding, we know that, sex is something that God would have created. So why do you think God would have allowed sex to have such affection in the first place?
Yeah. You see, every child born on the earth is a product of sexual intercourse between a man and a woman. I wouldn't add in marriage to the first statement, because these days many children are born out of wedlock. So because I'm not using marriage, do not say talking. No, I mean sex on the whole, in and outside of marriage. So without sex, there can't be fertilization in the female fallopian tubes. And God, knowing this very well, created sex to not only be used for procreation, but children in the context of marriage. But he made it highly enjoyable so that people will do it. They will do it. As they do it, it safeguards the maintenance of the human race. You see, if sex was not enjoyable, if it was boring, if it was annoying, if it was painful, we would not have done it. And in that way, we would not have been here today. It's the same thing with food. If food was not enjoyable and sex was not enjoyable, we would have been gone by now. But because these things are enjoyable, it helps the procreation to continue. It helps the race to continue. So God, in his wisdom, he made it so highly affectionate, so highly, the emotions are so great that we will not die out. God will have to bring this thing to an end. So the reason why God has made it with such affection, I think is Akira who asked that question, is to make sure that we live, procreate, enjoy his goodness until he comes to call us all home.
Good morning, everyone. Pastor, thank you for that, thorough explanation, right? 2 words stuck out to me: Christian perspective and, 3 words. Outside of wedlock and inside of wedlock, right? My question would then be, is your sex a persuasive practice among certain groups or not others? Or is it common across the board? So is it that only non-Christians engage in this activity, or is it Christians engage in this activity? Kind of break that down for me to understand.
Okay. I did a study once on music and sex, but something that was done on the local scene. And in doing that music and sex, what I found is that we are all sexual beings, but different trigger happens with others. In fact, in the area of sexuality, sociologists focus their attention on sexual attitudes and practices, not on physiology or anatomy, not on psychology either. So sexuality is viewed as a person's capacity for sexual feelings. Now, studying sexual attitudes and practice among different groups, sociologists recognized that sexual behavior is universal, but it is done through different sets of culture. Culture is a strong element in group behavior, in personal behavior, in how sex is concerned. Now, Broadway in 2003 said, throughout time and place, the vast majority of human beings have participated in sexual relationship. It is a natural and normal thing for each human being. But the question is asked, is it more pervasive in one group or the other? Let's continue. Each society, however, interprets sexuality and sexual activities in different ways. So it comes back to a social construct. How the society sees sex will determine how people indulge in sex and the things they do when they indulge in sex. Each society interprets sexuality and sexuality in different ways, I said, but many societies around the world have different attitudes and sexual activities in many ways. About premarital sex, society differ on how they see it. The age of sexual content is also different. How they view homosexuality, masturbation, and other sexual behaviors. These are societal things. So it's not as easy to say, well, here it's done more or there it's done more without understanding what the society gives as far as the idea of sex is concerned. But at the same time, sociologists have learned that certain norms are shared among most societies. The incest taboo is present in every society at some level. Though which relative is deemed acceptable may differ in societies. The fact of incest across the board, it is not embraced in any society. You see, incest remains a taboo. For example, sometimes relatives of the father are considered acceptable sexual partners for women, while the relatives of the mother are not. So sometimes the uncles on the father's side, a woman could marry her uncle on the father's side. In fact, it happens when a brother dies in these societies. Sometimes an uncle have to take over of the children. Uncle have to take over the family. And sometimes that uncle, because he doesn't have a wife, he will take one of his brother's daughter as his wife. These happen in different in society. And it is not done because they are, as you would say, sinful. It is done because of the culture of the society. Likewise, society generally have norms that reinforce the acceptable social needs of sexuality. In every society, the society is not something that run wild and haywire and what you feel to do, you do. In every society, there are barriers in dealing with sex and sexuality. What is considered normal in terms of sexual behavior is based on the morals and the values of the society. If someone from Bahrain or Saudi Arabia or one of these Middle East countries are dropped in Trinidad on Carnival, what he or she will witness is sexual activities as far as they are concerned. This mass gyration on people and people bending over and people whining on them, and they will see that as sex. Granted, they are not seeing penetration and these things, but the activities, they were considered sexual activities, while we were not. Well, we are not, because in our mind, whining and dancing, that's culture. In their culture, they have no peaceful response to two persons on the street doing something like that. They will haul them off to jail, if not kill them, because as far as they're concerned, that will be having sex in public. But we will not see it that way. And the reason why we are not seeing that way, looking at the same thing, is because of how we view what is sex, how our society determines what is sex. Society that value monogamy, for example, will likely oppose extramarital sex. So we see monogamy, but we are moving away from that. Individuals are socialized to sexual attitudes by their family, by the education system, by the peers, by the media, and religion. So historically, religion has been the greatest influence on sexual behavior in most societies. But in more recent years, peers and the media has emerged as two of the strongest influence, particularly around teens in Western society. So when we speak about sex and groups, it has a lot to do with the society that we are looking at. I know some folks may feel that Afros, well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. But I'm saying as of now, what I'm saying to you is that the issue of sex and groups has a lot to do with the society that these groups are formed within.
Thanks, Pastor. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, with every topic, there's the positive and the negative side. So I wanted to ask you then, what are the negative consequences of having sex?
Okay. Having sex may have little or no consequences within the marriage framework and with one partner. However, as with everything, temperance is important. And this is why I'm going to get a little raunchy here, because some folks have problems with sex and they stop doing it altogether and they frustrate their marriage partner. And some people have a problem with sex and they decide that they will not get married. Now, one of the drawbacks of having sex, if you are doing it every day, now one day or once a week or twice, I'm not saying that once the pastor says sex should be once a week, I'm just explaining something here. If it's a once a week or twice a week thing with sex, then it may not have much drawbacks. But once it becomes a regular thing, like 5 days, every day, there are a lot of drawbacks. Women begin suffering from vaginal dryness. Now, daily sex may result in vaginal tears, particularly if they are underlying condition like vaginal dryness. Now, once you are having sex every day, you run the risk of having vaginal dryness. Another thing, the risk of UTI. Now, UTI don't come because your partner fooling around. Other people think that's the way they get UTI. UTIs come when you have daily intercourse. Then you have an increase in the risk of bladder and vaginal infection once you're having regular sex. Body fluid can change the pH levels in your vagina, which increases your risk of infection. So the more you have sex, the more that risk of vaginal infection increases. Now, losing interest in the middle of an act, that happens also. That's one of the downside of sex, having sex often. Even if having sex gives you energy, having too much of it, especially if you do it frequently, may make you lose interest in the middle of the act. And I know people who have counseled people who have had that problem and thinking that something is wrong with them, and the spouse thinking something is wrong with them also. Why would you, in the midst of having sex, decide to abandon the act? And this happens. Your body needs a break from regular sexual activities. And when this happens, because your body is saying to you, hey, this 8 days a week thing can't work, you have to adjust. So as nice as the feel it is, you have to adjust because it is creating some negatives. Plus, we have what we call exhaustion. When you have too much sex with your spouse, the body releases norepinephrine and adrenaline and cortisol from the bloodstream, which result in an increase in heart rate, in glucose metabolism, and blood pressure. Daily sex becomes physically taxing because these things are being released every day if you are going through this thing every day. And this can give you fatigue for the entire day. So overindulging in sex can cause tiredness that lasts the entire day. Now, I am not giving you instructions about how much sex you should have. A question was asked about negatives, and I'm just going through the sort of negatives. Apart from things like when you are, and this is I'm dealing with this within the marriage framework. Outside of the marriage, there are different sort of negatives that we can talk about. But I'm still dealing with it in the marriage. The thing we call sore penis is common for males to have a quick, intense discomfort in the penis after sex. A sore penis can result from frequent sex because of prolonged manual stimulation, forced ejaculation, and other factors. But I want to say something too. When one suffering from sore penis and they begin having sex, it do not appear if there's any pain, because all the different the hypothalamus regions and all those things acting up at the same time create that mental absence from the pain. But when sex is over, that negative, that pain and all that comes back, and you can go on and on until you can find yourself having to see a doctor. Now, if pain persists for several hours or days, you may have an infection in the testicles, the prostate, or the epidermis, or you may have contracted a sexually transmitted diseases. So the sore penis can have other consequences too. But I'm saying these are the negative consequences of having too much sex. Keep that in mind. And plus the scraping of the vulvar skin. In women who have too much sex, vaginal excoriation might happen. That is where the scraping of the vulvar skin, and she may be in pain for a long time, and then she may have, when she feels she's okay again, because of the damage that was done, it could be constant recurrence until she decides that, I don't want to have no sex. And that creating all kind of problem in the marriage now, because man will say, what is happening? What is happening? How come you don't want to have sex with me? And then they have what we call lower back pain. Lower back pain is another indication that you're having too much sex. It's not only stress causing it. It's not only something live outside causing it. Stop fooling yourself. Could be you causing it. So once you increase the activity, you run the risk of having lower back pain. And lower back discomfort is common when there are quick movement that put too much strain on the lower back. Some of you like to be acrobats and things like that. It creates all sorts of problems. However, if repeated rapid movement lead to chronic lower back discomfort, that may be the cause, and you got to stop and give yourself some chance, as you'll be plagued through life with back pain. And then addiction. I hope I'm answering your question. Addiction. A further drawback of daily sex is the potential for addiction. You see, a person with a sexual addiction may sever their relationship with their spouse because they become preoccupied with sex or have an excessively strong sex drive. So although they have become a sexual addict, they are not going to their spouse for this satisfaction. And that is a danger in itself. Research has shown that the average adult has 54 times per year, but sex frequency varies from person to person. That frequency can change depending on a few factors, including age. People in their 20s, for example, have sex about 80 times per year. It is common for sexual frequency to decline after age 50, and people in their 60s have sex about 20 times per year. That frequency stays relatively steady among unpartnered people. Sex frequency, however, typically decline among people who are married or living together. And we can discuss that, but one of the negative aspects of sex is that it is not seen as negative until the issue of addiction comes in. The nature of sex that increases one desire. When one begins with sex, we have that desire that increase. Once you start sex, that desire increase until age put a stop to it. That was a long answer, but I could have said more on that. But trust me, I just try to give as much as they could. And that was in marriage. If I say with outside marriage, we know what happened. We know what AIDS and syphilis and gonorrhea and all these other things added to it when it's been done outside of marriage as a regular, as in regular time. Because the more you do something, the more the chance of something going wrong happens. The more I get on the road with my car, the more the chances of getting an accident happens. The more I fly on airplanes, the more the chances of dying in a crash happens. It's like everything else. The more you do it, the more chances of bad things happening can happen. Yes. Hello, are you
So,
out there?
and on that note, I want to ask you, since you've spoken about the negative aspects of sex, right? Why do you think sex has become so alluring once you start it? Why do you think it's so attractive and everybody wants to do it? And why is that?
Because you see, the pleasure center of the brain is a complex network of structures deep within the brain responsible for experiencing pleasure and reward. It plays a vital role in reinforcing behaviors crucial for survival, like eating, like drinking, like reproduction. These are pleasure centers in your brain that carry with it memory. My advice to the youth who is listening to me, if you have never had sex, don't do it. Don't care how pleasurable people say it is. Don't do it. And if you have done it and you're experiencing that desire for more, I'm saying to you, don't feel guilty to hide. You are experiencing a normal phenomenon that you need to deal with. I know the church will make you feel, and that's why you hide, and that's why they do it, and that's why the church cannot control this sexual explosion that's going on in the church, because they see it as evil, they see it as wicked, they see the people premarital sex, they're going to hell, but they do not see the biological and the psychological and the sociological aspect of the thing. It's the same way we treat with homosexuality, We hardly see that there are other issues than that spiritual issue that you are talking about. So telling me it's wrong and it's a sin and God will punish me, that is well and good to keep me mindful that it is wrong. But the issue that I am dealing with, the psychological issue, the sociological issue, the biological issue, telling me that God will send me to hell, it doesn't help that. You see, these pleasure triggers are inflamed and they have a memory that recognizes pleasure. A central player in the pleasure center is the nucleus accumbens, often referred to as the brain reward center. It receives signals from other brain parts, such as the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, and releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure feelings. And anytime you and the person find yourself in confined secret places, it would be difficult not to have sex with each other. Once you had sex with someone, once you had it with them a few times, and there was a lot of pleasure there, and you enjoyed that situation, you all could part for years. You're running to each other in secret confines, and the chances of having sex is great, great, great. Because those atomic region, they have memory. It have memory to tell you that if I put my hand in fire, I'll get burned. At some time I got burned. So anytime I see the fire, I pull away. I move away. I'm driving my car at a certain speed. I want to get where I'm going. When I look and I see the speed that I'm going at, my air conditioning is up. So my windows are up because of air conditioning. And I can't feel this. When I see the speed, it tells me to stop. It tells me to stop. But I want to say to you, people who have had sexual relations over a period of time and they truly enjoyed it, that memory is there. It didn't go away, especially if you all parted on not a very on a very normal basis. Wasn't he shoot at you and you duck and you call the police? And even so, some people still, when they meet each other, they have sex because the memory center reminds you of the pleasure that this person brought to you. And that's why that's why the old people had a saying. They didn't understand the science. So they say, old firewood is catch easy. They know something happened with the old firewood, but they didn't understand what was happening. What was happening is the memory that your thalamic regions carry with you. And as they carry that memory, when you see that person who you enjoy that person company, there are some people are not having sex, not because they don't want to, because they haven't found the opportunity to. But that happens. So that alluring will continue. Once you have sex, it enter the memory, and that desire will be a desire you continue to want. Once you do something that you enjoyed, and feeling for that again becomes part of the memory. And that's why God had made it that do it in marriage, because you need no memory to stir you and trigger you is your spouse. And that's why that has become the desire of God.
Thanks for that, Pastor. I'm listening and I'm hearing you talking about the memory and the reward center and all these different things. And so I want to bring marriage into the equation now and ask you, what is the relevance of what you are saying in the context of marriage then?
All right. Because sex is about bonding. Sex bonding, the reason why you thinking about the person and you and the person is because sex have created a bond. So bonding is enormously important, that marriage parties have sex as often as they can and only with each other. You see, the more sex they have, the stronger the bond becomes. And the stronger the bond becomes, the longer the marriage will last. That's why in ancient marriages, men used to marry when they were about 40, women 12 and 13 and 14 and 15. And the reason for that is that they had no hydraulic equipment back in those days. So what was important to the factory, which is the man's farm, is an agrarian society, was having boys. The more boys you had, the more work you'd have gotten done on the farm. So men never used to release their boys. They would keep their boys as long as the boy can work. When the boy say, well, having back pain and thigh strain, he recognized the machinery breaking down. He cannot go in the bamboo for parts, so he decided he will get rid of the boy. You know how you get rid of a car giving you trouble? But he started to get rid of the boy through marriage. On the other hand, the man who have the daughter, and she's 13, 14, once she says that she's having her monthly, he recognized, the society recognized, the next thing will start happen is those feelings will come, and he will try to get a husband for his son. So he will go around to a man, he will put him up, and somebody cannot find a husband for his son. So what they did, they would go and they would carry more and more daughters. So one man have 7 daughters. He doesn't have 7 daughters because he's kinky or something like that. He has 7 daughters because it is important to the economy that he has these daughters. So what happens, we're having a daughter 13 years and you have about 7 of them in 20 years. You have over 50 children to start to work the field. So it was something that was beneficial. However, on the marriage night, the couple will sleep on a white mattress, a white sheet, sorry. And in the morning, the man was supposed to hang that sheet in the window. And if when he hung that sheet in the window, the sheet was still white, somebody will tell the father of that girl, go and pick up your daughter, because she cannot marry if she's not a virgin. So they had a way to control sex activity in the ancient days. Only virgin could get married. And the reason for that, this is God's reason. Even if you rape the woman, you're supposed to marry her, And the reason for that is seeing what we are witnessing now in the high rates of divorce. The high rates of divorce has a lot to do with premarital sex. Because of the pleasure center memory, every sexual partner leaves something with you. So you carry references to bed. All new things feel good, You buy a new shoe, it feels good. You buy a new shirt, it feels good. But after 2-3 wears, you wear it again. They're feeling the same. But the same way, with a new sex partner. But they leave something with you. And all these things are carried to bed with the person. And everything feels good, as I said, when it's new. But as time goes on, the references began to play emotional part in the bed and in the marriage. And this is when people begin saying, he doesn't satisfy me, and she doesn't satisfy me. And then that is when that term comes in, because you have references. And once you have these references, it's a challenge to keep the marriage. It's a challenge, especially if some of those references you had enjoyed immensely. You hold on. You hold on to that person. You hold on to those memories. And then more and more, the person who your marriage partner become less and less glamorous to you, less and less fulfilling. There's less joy. And then come to the point when you say, I need to go. This thing is killing me.
You know, you're provoking some thoughts within me here. You know, you stressed on the age back in the day being around 13. And
Yeah.
that brings me to the question, you know, within our society now, why do you think sex is being practiced by younger and younger people? Why is that?
Because you see, young people today are participating in a wider range of sexual practices than people back in the old days, and with opposite partners, and they are seeing things differently. However, having sex for the first time at a young age is linked to various negative outcomes. Poor and underprivileged youth are more likely to start having sex at a younger age, which researchers attribute to the legacy of institutionalized racism and things like that. Understanding young people's motivation for sex is critical to their sexual behavior. In the past times, teenagers who had a closer relationship with their family and their neighbors were less likely to start having sex at a younger age. What we are witnessing all over the country, all over the Caribbean, and all over in the cities and things where there's poor and underprivileged, what we are witnessing is a change in the society where social media has separated teenagers from the family. And they are being taught that there is a dossier that outlines what a teenager is and the behavior code that should be practiced. They are being socialized to see themselves as outcasts on social media. So if I'm in a house, you're going to any home, children are always on their devices. There's hardly any family coming together and talking. There's no longer family having lunch or dinner together, so I can sit by the table and talk. Is they cook the food, and then the mother, whoever cooked, will come and say the food finished. And one by one, who don't have a friend talking to here and there, go and they have their lunch. So there's no gathering of the minds anymore. And sex is very important in that transformation. It is the reason why church, out of church, loners, educated, uneducated, they are all having sex because wherever they are, the same dossier is being used. You see, clothing, hairstyle, the music, the language, it's all the same, regardless of the social grouping that they belong. So guys in church now having haircut, strange haircut. And if you tell them about it, some adult will tell you you should not. But those are signs that they are reading from a dossier that is different from the one that is in church. They dress now, and you don't know if they are going to church, or if they are going to Lime, or they are going by Kess or Bungie or Marshall. You don't know. But they're coming to church like that. And the reason for that is not that they sat on the bed and said, I want to change my clothing. I want to change my hairstyle. No. They are reading from the same dossier that tells them that this is what they need to be a young person. And in that dossier has a lot of sex. In that very dossier that they're reading from, there's a lot of sex in that. And sex determines if you are ready, if you are there, if you are hip, if you are one-off, if you are trending. Sex determines that also. So when the issue of condoms, people don't talk about it again. I can remember when they all talk about wrap it up, you wear a condom, they need to talk about it again. But even when condoms are used, it is used not because of abstinence, it is used to protect against pregnancy and STI prevention, and not because of religion and moral persuasion. Why it is the best option for preventing both pregnancy and sexual transmission or transmitted infection, many adolescents and young adults choose to become sexually active during their late and early 20s, late teens and early 20s, but they begin at younger age also. And that is not happening because they got up one morning and say, today is a good day for me to go and have sex. No, they are being taught that. It is part of the socialization of young people. Is it TikTok? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is all these things are operating within their sphere and teaching them. And that's why the young men in church look just as the young men out of church. Young girls in church look just as the young girls out of church. That is the reason for that, because they are all being socialized with the same device.
So, Pastor, I'm hearing you talk about all these pressures that young people face, from social media and peer pressure and all these different things. And I think it's especially strong for men, young men, there's a certain expectation and all these different kinds of things. So I want to know then, on the one hand, young people feel all this pressure. And then on the next hand, we are being taught, especially in the church, to be abstinent and all these different kinds of things. So how do we reconcile those things? How can we be abstinent in the face of all these pressures and influences?
I'm glad you asked the question because I want to say something. The first thing, I'm no liberal preacher, so don't think he's liberally saying that thing. The first thing, the church must change their view of this thing and stop thinking that your pastors can handle it. Because sex is prevalent in the church, so you recognize your pastors cannot handle it. That's the first thing. The church must understand that. And they must call competent people to deal with it. Not only pastors are not trying, they are trying, but they don't have the tools. So the first thing, if it be from the church must recognize that the pastor's competence is not there in dealing with it. I see it all the time, I see workshops and I see Pastor Jones and, sorry, I say Pastor Jones, we have a pastor called Jones, that's it. I say Pastor Music and Pastor, let's call her name, Pastor Bernard and Pastor Akira, and I'm seeing there calling them to do things that you need social expertise to do. So they come around and they talk about what God, and they tell them about David, how David was a good boy, and how Joseph kept to himself and he ran away. And they tell themselves that by saying these things to the young people, some way, somehow, it will help. And I'm saying, no. This thing is not just a spiritual thing. This thing is biological. This thing is psychological. This thing is sociological. This thing takes up the whole man. It is the most terrible, and if I want to use the word terrible, emotions that a man can have is one emotion that can drive him to do things that he doesn't want to do. And that's why when you approach it, it must be approached differently. Firstly, there's a parental responsibility. Abstinence education is essential for reducing out of wedlock childbearing and improving emotional and physical well-being. Clinicians can learn from sexually absent young women, and abstinence can be a viable choice after sexual initiation. I want to say, even after you have had sex, I want to say you can still practice abstinence, not by going and kneel down and pray every day. You can do that, but then you have to, all right. Let me get that there before they say I said what I didn't say. The parent ought to show the value of abstinence, but that is not a remedy for sexual troubles and pressures which the youth is exposed. The conversation must be had, and the value system of the family should be upheld. God is still in the saving business. The same way you treat the alcoholic in recovery, is identical for the treatment of one wanting to move away from that sexual life. I said identical. All boyfriends and all girlfriends, they must be taught to stay away from, not even texting. Not even texting. Because as I said, the memory is there. And these things will trigger memory. So leave them out. Social media platform and friends who encourage your behavior are to be shunned. You must get them in spaces where they have new friends. You must get them in places where they have new friends who are doing something. They have to have new recreation. So they must come to the place where a newness is happening, because the old way, the brain is packed with memory of the old way. The same pleasure centers that cause the craving for sexual activities is also what is used to avoid pain, danger, anger, etc. I think I told you before, folks who do me wrong, there are some folks who have done me wrong. How I forgive them, but what I do not congregate with them. I do not go where they are. And if I go and they are there, I tend to spend a short time and get myself out of there. Because I don't want anything, that memory center, to stir the thoughts in me again that will cause me to sin. So I move away. If somebody talk and I found they're a gossiper, I didn't find me and that person going down the road. Or you didn't find me in any area where the person is hanging around, because I don't want the triggers. And that's how you have to take it to young people. Before we ask any question, I recognize it's 8 minutes too. Alex, I don't know if you have anybody there.
All right. Well, we can open the phone lines right now, 622-4911, and I'll let you know when the calls are coming in, Pastor.
Thank you very much. So I stay away from wherever, and that's why to teach young people the things that and you as a young person, if you want to get yourself away from that, you think about what caused you to do that in the first place. And those are the things you need to shun. It's not an easy road. But when you are so burdened and you feel you cannot get to cry out to Jesus, man, call out. But it's not an easy road, but it can be done. Okay.
But wouldn't you agree that within those environments, the issue of sex prevails in everything?
Yes, I agree with you. But when you decide to make that turn, you must see life and sex differently. Friendship with the other sex should only be seen through the dating and marriage cycle. The issue that you are not ready for marriage can be a trick of the devil. I have 5 degrees, and every single one of them, I got it after marriage. Every single one. So you cannot tell yourself that marriage will curtail your growth and you're not ready for marriage. You must see, I'm ready for life. Every partner you meet should be a potential mate, and you ought to bring the elder or the pastor into the picture. Everybody said that too, I see you and I feel I'm interested in you. I will not go running around, because I'll tell you, the more time we spend together, the more those hormones will run wild. The more we hold hands, the more we kiss, the more it will escalate to the point of us having sex. So counseling ought to be done as soon as there is interest, not after many years when you set the date for the marriage.
Pastor, sorry, we have a call coming in.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, good morning.
A blessed morning to Mr. Alex and to Pastor. Strong and God guidance speak to you all. You see, nature is something like this. We, the human race, causes all the problems on the face of the earth. When something reaches purity, from a plant to a tree to whatever it is there. Sex is pure and divine by the blessing of God. When he made Adam and Eve, did he marry them? We say, go forth and multiply. Was one lady and 2 men, I ask him. And when we must understand the man making laws you cannot have sex until you're 18, which is, you don't reach puberty, you cannot stop it. It is something real and blessed. This body is a sacred body. It knows when it wants something and it knows when it needs it. And we put fear against sex, which is wrong. God is pure and divine, and we all are pure. You know, when you watch somebody, you're intoxicated with natural love. But when you have to go and take alcohol and whatever to get intoxicated, go to bed with that person, you become numb and you have no respect for yourself and that body. You all have a blessed and wonderful day, and God guide us.
Thank you very much, my brother. Right, as I was saying, let the counselor decide if this is a mate for you. We must begin this sexual fight from an early age, and that's where the parents begin the fight. The parents begin the fight. It must be determined and focused. You must come to realize that there are things that are beyond you. Hence, your God and your wisdom must unite in this fight. So I agree with you, Akira. It's in the environment, but you got to see it differently. You got to see getting a mate differently. You got to see the opposite sex differently. And that a training that the parents must bring to them. And nobody should tell you, as the caller just said there, the law say 18 years, but nobody could tell you when you after you reach 18 years, you can't get married, you know. And folks say, well, I can't take care of a wife, but there are the parents and then come in. But I'm saying to you, I'm not saying run out there and get married and you're walking over, but I'm saying that do not allow things like education and these things to stop you from getting married. You could do all those things after you are married. All those things after you are married. Okay, folks?
Yes, and I know we're coming close to the end of our time this morning, but you said something that, I preach to anybody that will hear, which is that, when you date somebody, you're dating for marriage. That should be the aim and the goal.
That should be
and
the
sort
aim.
of,
That
yes.
should be the aim, nothing else.
Not for fun or anything else.
Not
But
for fun.
I want
that should be
I
on
want,
your mind. As soon as you
yes.
start that dating process, that should be on your mind. That this is marriage we are heading for.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to ask a question that I feel I know the answer to, but I'll still ask. Which of the sexes do you think is more aggressive when it comes to sex and making advances and these sorts of things?
This will depend on who you're asking. If you ask the psychologists, they would say men, because they will base this on the analysis of the aggression of men and how they behave in general, how they drive, how they abuse relationship, homicide, and etc. But sex is a big topic in sociology, and that's why the findings show a rise in female initiation of sexual advancement. The issue, you see, a girl going to a boy and the boy saying no, it doesn't affect the girl in any way. When a boy goes to a girl and she says no, it affects him. It affects him among his peers also.
Pastor, we have one more call coming in.
Sure.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it wrong to be in a house where the two parents live, male and female, and they're not having sexual relationships? They live that life for over 12 years, no kissing, no holding. You're sitting down, you're grating corn, you're seeing about animals with them, you're going in the bush with them. And eventually, as time goes by, you've been asking, and one day the person tells you, well, look, I am now ready to get married. And you live that life, and the person leaves you, either says you're going to heaven. And I sit down and I say, well, what to do? This thought coming in my mind about the person.
Cora, here's what, Cora. We are out of time, but I promise you, call me next week before I get into the program. I will answer what you are saying, because what you are saying is serious and it happens.
Yes.
Okay? Because we are out of time. But I promise you, call me next week as soon as the program starts, before I get into my own program. I will talk to you on this, because it's an issue that a lot of people have, where they are in the same house and no sex happening and other things happening. So we'll talk to that. I know that this time was a flag like this. So until next week, the question that the last question that they asked there, there's a growing, the women are catching up now. The average men partners is about 16, and the average woman is about 14 now. It never used to be so. But maybe we touch these things on a different day and we bring these things back. So until then, Alex, sorry for going over a minute here, but God is good, and catch you next week, God willing. Be blessed.
Thanks very much, Pastor and guests. Thank you for calling in, listeners as well. Victorious Lifestyle every Sunday morning, 9 to 10 a.m. here on Talk City 91.1 FM as we return to our